Intensive care is a place that most people only ever get to hear about, but I think the last 18 months have thrown us sharply into the focus of most people. What a lot of people did not see is the sacrifice that the nurses and doctors and physios and porters, the people who were making sure that we are able to continue caring for some of the sickest patients that we have ever seen in the history of healthcare. The other thing that people probably did not see and still do not see is the human cost of having cared through the last 18 months. So I think for a lot of people, when you're talking about the human cost, people think, oh, well, people had to continue going to work while the rest of the world was in lockdown. People had to work in full PPE and, all of those things which were obvious. But that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the human cost of caring through the last 18 months. With the knowledge that they are going to face some of the sickest patients they've ever had to face, but also there is a very real risk that they would catch COVID themselves and take it home to their family. I was one of those people. Every single time that I turned up for work and I worked in a COVID zone, I went home with the thought that today is the day that I'm going to take COVID to my family. And that happened every single day that we were in peak 1 and every single day that we were in peak 2 of the COVID pandemic. I still wasn't prepared for another aspect of the pandemic that, while it was greatly talked about, very little was known about it, which was the effect on healthcare workers of having cared through that first peak and that second peak. Because what most people don't realize is that for people who were caring day in and day out, the way we started to deliver care was very altered. What we had to do was learn to deliver care that we felt as critical care nurses was suboptimal. Not because we cut corners, not because we didn't look after our patients, but because we weren't able to deliver the aspects of care that make our environment a human environment. By that I mean, we couldn't let our patients' relatives visit. That placed a greater emotional and psychological burden on the nurses, because they not only were they nurses and carers, they became the family of those patients who were either trying really, really hard and fighting for their lives to recover from COVID-19, or were dying in the complete absence of their families. Because for us in critical care, part of what we do is providing a good death for our patients. For me, as matron of critical care, I can confidently say that that was one of the saddest things I've had to experience, because we were not able to provide a good death by our standards. We had to learn to deliver end-of-life care to patients who were dying on their own while we held their hands, and their families sometimes were on the other side of a screen, of an iPad screen, while they FaceTimed a dying relatives. That is a memory that will live with me probably for the rest of my life, because that is not how we deliver care in intensive care. We humanize death. So when I say that what's hidden is the human cost of having cared through the COVID-19 pandemic, part of what I'm referring to is the effects that this has had on the majority of my team, who are now experiencing emotional and psychological disturbances because of having cared through that, because of having witnessed so much death, almost like death on a conveyor belt at times, because there was no family there to break up the monotony of people dying on their own, or to break up the monotony of working in full PPE without actually knowing who you were working next to, because sometimes you couldn't recognize your colleague because of all the gear that we had to be kitted out in. When I say it's been an incredibly challenging 18 months, I think sometimes it is quite an understatement. But I have never seen a group of people who are so committed to caring in the way that I have witnessed in the last 18 months. I work with some of the most highly driven, some of the most caring and compassionate people that I've ever had, the fortune to work with. And if I can continue as a team leader, as a matron, as a senior nurse, if I can continue to nurture some of these people who some are quite damaged by their experience, if I am able to continue nurturing them so that at some point I can help some of those people to become the best version of themselves at work, then I think there will be some good that will have come out of the COVID-19 pandemic.